The Old Sanatorium loomed like a sleeping colossus atop the mountain, its empty windows resembling dark ocular sockets. The local legend described it as a cursed place, where sinister medical experiments had led to unimaginable horrors. Despite the warnings, Anya, a young journalist with an insatiable thirst for the unknown, felt irresistibly drawn to the site. With a camera in hand and a flashlight that barely fought against the darkness, Anya ventured into the building. The hallway smelled of dampness and decay, and the creaking of the floorboards beneath her feet was the only sound breaking the sepulchral silence. The walls were covered in cracks and peeling paint, and shadows danced on the ceiling, taking on grotesque shapes. Upon reaching a room at the end of the hallway, Anya turned on her flashlight. In the center of the room, on a metal table, she found a dusty diary. As she opened it, her eyes fell upon elegant yet trembling handwriting. The diary belonged to Dr. Elias Thorne, one of the former doctors of the sanatorium. His writing spoke of experiments with parallel dimensions, portals to other worlds, and a dark energy that dwelled in the depths of the mountain. Anya read with growing fascination and terror. Dr. Thorne had managed to open a door to another dimension, but the consequences had been catastrophic. A dark entity, an amorphous and voracious shadow, had escaped from that dimension and taken over the sanatorium. The diary ended abruptly, with a desperate scrawl and a single underlined word: containment. Anya closed the diary with a shiver. The flashlight flickered and went out, plunging the room into total darkness. A distant sound, like a whisper or a moan, made her shudder. She felt watched, stalked by something lurking in the shadows. With her heart pounding in her chest, Anya got up from the floor. Searching for a new source of light, she found a wall-mounted flashlight and turned it on, its weak beam barely illuminating a corner of the room. She decided to continue exploring the sanatorium, despite the terror that engulfed her. The hallways became an endless maze, peeling walls, broken windows that revealed the vastness of the night, and a sepulchral silence that was only interrupted by the echo of her footsteps. The darkness was so deep that it seemed to absorb the little light that remained in the room. Anya, with her heart pounding in her chest, braced herself for the worst. Suddenly, a shadow detached itself from the darkness, stretching and contorting until it took on an undefined shape. It was the entity, an amorphous mass of shadows that seemed to flow and change constantly. Its eyes, if they could be called that, glowed with a cold and malevolent light. With a guttural sound that resonated against the walls of the room, the entity lunged at Anya. She narrowly dodged its dark tentacles, but the creature was fast and agile. The room turned into chaos, with Anya fighting for her life as the entity relentlessly pursued her. In a moment of desperation, Anya remembered Dr. Thorne's journal. Perhaps there was something in his writings that could help her. With superhuman effort, she managed to reach the journal and opened it to the page where the ritual to close the portal was described. The words faded before her eyes, but she managed to distinguish a key phrase. Light is the only weapon. Inspired by those words, Anya concentrated all her energy on the small flashlight she still carried with her. She aimed the beam of light at the entity, and to her surprise, the creature seemed to recoil, as if the light burned it. With renewed hope, Anya began to recite the words of the ritual while the entity writhed and moaned in pain. The battle was long and exhausting, but in the end, Anya managed to complete the ritual. A blinding glow enveloped the room, And when it dissipated, the entity had vanished. The sanatorium fell silent, steeped in a precarious calm. What do you think of this outcome? We can add more details, such as a more detailed description of the entity or the battle, or explore the consequences of closing the portal. Anya, exhausted but victorious, stood contemplating the ruins of the entity. The morning light began to filter through the broken windows, revealing the desolation of the sanatorium. She had managed to close the portal, but at what cost? The battle had left her marked, both physically and psychologically. As she left the sanatorium, Anya turned back one last time. She felt a presence watching her from. Anya, who had dedicated her life to investigating the paranormal, returned to the sanatorium one last time. She wanted to ensure that the entity had been completely destroyed. But as she crossed the threshold, she felt a wave of cold that froze her to the bone. The walls seemed to whisper secrets to her, and the shadows moved with an unsettling life of their own. In the center of the room, where she had confronted the entity, she found a new diary. It was Dr. Thorne's diary, but the last pages were blank. Anya opened it and began to write, documenting everything she had experienced. When she finished, she closed the diary and left it in the same place where she had found it. As she exited the sanatorium, Anya realized that she had not closed the portal, but had instead moved it. Now, the portal was within her, and the dark entity would accompany her until the end of her days.